How are we? This is Chat UTD and something a little bit different. I'm going to do a series of top fives over the next few weeks, particularly perhaps focusing on it in pre-season, but a bit of an itch I wanted to scratch, to be honest, thinking about it for a while. When Jamie Carragher did his top 10 Premier League midfielders, it sowed the seed in my head to do something similar on here, but obviously making it exclusive to United and looking at different positions. I'm going to start with the centre midfield position. I think it's one of the obviously key areas of the pitch. It's an area we are lacking in at the moment and need severe investment in. I'm going to look at the top 5 centre midfielders, in my opinion, that have played for United over the years that I've been watching, which spans from 1988 until present day. I'm not going to comment on anyone before that because that would be purely speculative. So number 5, Paul Ince. Paul Ince came to United, I think, in 1988 or 89, and was a regular starter for West Ham at that point. Believe it or not, he wasn't always nailed on to be a centre midfield player. There was times at United in his early career when he filled in at right back quite regularly. He wasn't really an automatic starter in the first couple of seasons. Neil Webb and Brian Robson were the partnership that I think we were hoping to build the team around, but Neil Webb came in and got injured, and Ince got a bit more game time. He played his part in the road to the final in 1990. Perhaps played even more of a part in 90 to 91, getting to the Cup Winners' Cup final. Famously had one of the most horrific cuts I've seen in a game. I think it was away at Montpellier. 91-92 pretty much established himself as one of the key parts of the team. But for me, it was 92-93 and 93-94. He was at his absolute peak. He was phenomenal. Box-to-box midfield player, aggressive, strong in the tackle, cocky, arrogant, could take the ball in tight spaces, drove the team forward with lung-busting runs, could cover 20-30 yards really quickly with the ball at his feet, scored goals, assisted goals. A real mainstay in the team in 92-93 alongside Brian McClair in centre midfield. And then when Keane came in, on the face of it, you might look at that as a partnership and wonder if it will work because they're both combative. They both share a lot of the same attributes, but I thought together they were very good. And if anything, Ince just got better in the 93-94 season. And the measure of the man, really, I think it's difficult, potentially anyway, when someone comes in at a record fee who plays in your position, who has all the same attributes as you might take that as a hint. But Ince was so up his own backside, to be honest, that he didn't take that as a hint. He just continued to grow and evolve as a player, to the point where I think in 1995, when he left, it was a shock for United fans. I remember there was a poll in the Manchester Union News sort of saying Ferguson lost the plot. He's let go of Hughes, Ince and Kanchelskis. And that's where things started to sour in terms of the way Ince is remembered from United fans' perspective, because he went to Inter Milan with good wishes, with everyone wishing him the best of luck. I remember that programme on Channel 4 which covered Italian football. Can't remember what it was called, but he was interviewed a few times in his first season over in Milan and always referred to United as we, and was keeping his eye on the team's progress and all very old pals act type thing. And then of course when he came back to England, he came to Liverpool, and he insists that United had first refusal on him, and why should he not have gone to Liverpool? He was satisfied in the Northwest. That's his perspective. Sorry, he was comfortable in the Northwest. He liked living there. So why should he not? He was settled there. But you just don't do that. You just don't go to Liverpool. But not only do you not do that, when you score a goal for Liverpool in the last minute of a game to draw them level in the 99 season, I know it's a derby game and it's heat at the moment. And he's probably got some stick from our fans. But he went way overboard for me in his celebrations, and he became a bit of a pantomime villain, I guess. I remember being at Old Trafford in 2001. He came back with Middlesbrough and they won, and again he was properly giving it to United fans. But that's part of his character. That's part of what makes him the player that he was. And as time goes by, for me anyway, that annoyance that I would feel towards him, that it calms a little bit, and you remember the player he was. Paul Ince was a phenomenal player for United. But particularly those seasons, I think 92, 93, 93, 94 and 94, 95, he was an exceptional player. So he's number 5. All the best. It's good to remember the good times. Number 4, Bruno Fernandes. The best post-Sir Alex Ferguson signing, in my opinion. I remember Paul Pogba at United had all the natural gifts and talent in the world. And I remember people saying, oh, he needs to play just ever so slightly to the left of a 3, and to his right he needs someone like a Matic, and in front of him he needs someone like a Rashford, and ever so slightly diagonally to the right he needs someone like this, he needs this, he needs this, he needs this. All these needs that he had as a £90 million player. I'm not going to make it about Paul Pogba, but Bruno Fernandes came into the team and just went, hold this. What do you want me to do? Score goals? Check. Assist goals? Check. Drag the team forward when we're struggling? Check. Set a tone in the way that in the way that my body language is, all that kind of stuff? Check, 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 check. He ticked every box. And he does what he's supposed to do. He scores goals, he assists goals, and he is the leader and the pivotal point in our team. He's the focal point of our team. He's largely played for a very, very average Manchester United team over the years. In the peak years of his career, as for me, one of the best attacking midfield players in Europe. And I'm sure there's been plenty of times when there's been other suitors that have been interested in him. And much like another player that's going to be further up this list, he's always turned them down. And he spent the best years of his career in a struggling Manchester United team and continued, for me, to keep his levels really high. Some people moan about him gesticulating and throwing his arms in the air, say that's not a sign of leadership. We need more players that are in referees' ears. We need more players demanding more of each other. We need more players bemoaning things when they don't go well on the pitch. It can become toxic if it's too much, but I don't believe it is too much. He makes players around him better. He talks young players through games. The guy's just class. He scored some phenomenal goals for United. Some of the passes he does are just sumptuous. He's a deliverer of big moments. Drags the team by the scruff of the neck at times through tough games. Always willing to put a shift in. Will play any way you ask him to play. And people talk about positional indiscipline, ill discipline. Do you know what? Sometimes needs must. I always remember against Liverpool in the quarter-final of the FA Cup 2 or 3 years ago when we won it. We were down to 10 men. The game was stretched. He pretty much played as a centre-back. He just kept getting the ball and then was directing things from centre-back. And some people have a go at him for that and say, what's he doing there? He shouldn't be there. He's glory ball. He just wants the ball. He wants the ball all the time. He wants to make things happen. Do we not want more players like this rather than less? So newsflash, it won't be a surprise. He's the only modern player that's in this list. That's a massive compliment to him. So Bruno Fernandes is number 4. Bruno. Number 3, Paul Scholes. Scorer of some ridiculous goals. The ones that spring to mind: Bradford away in 2001 or 2000. Beckham takes the corner, floats it out, doesn't even bounce, first time on the volley. Ridiculous. Same season, I think, Middlesbrough hits one from about fully 30 yards. It starts 5 yards outside of the post and comes in and goes in. Aston Villa 2006-07. 2006-07. It's in the sky, it drops down, he just absolutely trolleys it, hits the underside of the bar. The winning goal in the semi-final of the Champions League against Barcelona, which he said he mishit. He didn't. He's just being humble. Scorer of truly great goals. And if you track Scholes' career, he came through as a young lad, painfully shy, really little, had asthma, not quick, a bit dumpy, and he was a centre forward when he started. He made his debut in '94 against Port Vale in the League Cup. He scored 2 goals as a centre forward, and whenever he got time on the pitch that season, it was as a centre forward. And even in '95-96, when he started to play more, it was maybe not an out-and-out striker, but the one that's just off the striker. It seemed to be his role. And it was as his career developed, really, he started to go further back into midfield. And even in '99, he wasn't a shoo-in. Sometimes it was Nicky Butt and Keane, sometimes it was Scholes and Keane. But it was probably 2000, 2001, you started to sort of see actually the repertoire of this player is quite unique. You know, his ability to do things with the football that others can't do is becoming more and more obvious. In 2001, when Ruud joined, Veron joined as well. And Ferguson put Scholes further forward. It's the first time we've really played with the 10. And that was Scholes' role. And he took a bit of time to adjust. And I think he's much better in centre midfield. But in the second season when Ruud was here, when Scholes had sort of perfected that role, I might be wrong, I'm sure he got close to 20 goals that season. And him and Ruud were like on a telepathic link with each other. They were great together. It shows the intelligence of him. Gone from centre forward to a midfielder, back to a 10. And then as his career progressed, he just moved further and further back. And by the end of his career, he was almost like that quarterback, that sitting midfielder who just orchestrated things. If you listen to players that played with him, like Roy Keane, would say, obviously when Scholes was probably right in his pomp, Keane will be massively complimentary of Scholesy. Nicky Butt loved playing with him. Players that played with him for England all talk about how great he was to play with. Michael Carrick, who was also a sitting midfielder, and Scholesy pretty much sat next to him in that era, but just talked so highly of him. Fletcher will talk highly of him. Owen Hargreaves will talk highly of him. Anyone who's played next to him talks highly of him. But maybe even more of a compliment than that is that world-class players, generational talents of the game, name-check Scholes as one of the best of their generation. Zidane, Iniesta, Xavi, Davids. These types of players hold Scholesy in such high esteem. And obviously a legend of United, a homegrown talent, a one-club man, came out of retirement to borrow some old boots or something like this famous story when he came out of retirement against City and won another Premier League title. So, brilliant player. The top two, I think, depends on your age, and this is a personal one to me. Number two for me is Brian Robson. I think if I was about 5 years older, he might be number one. Robson was my first hero. I started watching United in 1988. And that was the back end of his career, really. It was probably the last 6 years of his career, from 88 until 94. But from 88 until probably 92, he was everything to Manchester United. He was the captain of England, captain of United. I don't think the guy had a weakness on the pitch. He was strong, he was aggressive, he was brave to a fault. He probably had as many injuries as he had over the years because of how brave he was. He was a goal scorer. He had a phenomenal eye for a pass. He could drop into the defence, as he did in the latter part of his career a few times when necessary. Reading of the game was second to none. Inspiration to his teammates, but scored big goals at big times. Now, it's before my time, but I'm sure he scored a goal in the 1983 FA Cup final replay against Brighton. He might have even got two. He scored the winning goal in the semi-final against Liverpool in 1985. I'm sure he scored in the semi-final against Oldham in 1990 in an injury-ravaged season, but came back and played a part in the two semi-finals that got us to the final. I think he scored in the final against Crystal Palace, which helped us get the replay to then win it. He actually scored in the semi-final in 1994, but we beat Oldham 4-1 that day, so it was probably less important. 1984, in that famous night against Barcelona, a lot of, no disrespect, but old United fans remember and talk about one of the best atmospheres apparently ever at Old Trafford. He was the hero that night. He stood out when Maradona was in his absolute peak years, and Robson was the best player on the pitch. I mentioned with Bruno earlier, Bruno spent the peak years of his career at United. Robson spent the peak years of his career at United, and for me, I'm biased, was the best midfield player in Europe in an era when there was some stupidly good players. But he was the most complete centre midfield player in Europe, in my opinion, and he stayed at United, and is an ambassador for the club now, and he's idolised by people of my age, but particularly people who are perhaps again 3 to 5 years older than me. I was a centre midfielder as a kid, and my dad, when we used to go to the games, just say, just watch him. You're never going to be as good as him, but just watch him. Watch everything he does. Number one, there's only one. Roy Keane. Got relegated with Nottingham Forest. Came to United as a record transfer at the time. He was a young lad, really. He was 22, something like that. Coming into a dressing room of champions, of characters like Ince, Bruce, Pallister, Irwin, quiet but tough, Schmeichel, Cantona, Hughes, McClare, wise old heads that had been there a while and were not going to suffer fools gladly. And far from being intimidated by it or sinking under the pressure, it was like hand in glove. He knew he had to lift his levels, and he saw that as a personal challenge, and he did. When he first came in, he was a box-to-boxer next to Ince. Probably played that role for 2 or 3 years. I thought he really started to come into his own in the 95-96 season as a senior player, even though he was young himself with the class of 92 around him. I thought him, Cantona and Schmeichel that year were in the spine of the team a massive reason as to why we achieved what we achieved with all those youngsters around them. Keane holds ridiculously high standards for himself, importantly, and for everyone else around him. And it didn't matter if it was Cantona who hadn't maybe ran quickly enough, or if it was David Beckham, or if it was Phil Neville. It doesn't matter. Whoever's not quite lived to those standards is going to get it. And when you've got people like that who are so good themselves, it can only be good for the team in the way that he led the team. But there's a different side to him that people don't really sort of talk about too much. When I had my season ticket, I was at the game when John O'Shea made his debut. John O'Shea made his debut as centre-back. And Roy Keane, that day, you see it more when you're at the game, basically was never more than 5 yards away from John O'Shea. He commentated John O'Shea through the game. He instructed him and talked him through the whole game, whilst also playing centre midfield for Man United. And he was the man of the match, doing two things at the same time. Holding a young kid's hand to make sure he was all right, whilst bossing the midfield. I'd say that's bordering on impossible. To watch him was a pleasure. Did the simple things beautifully well. Ball retention, great eye for a pass, massively underrated in that regard. His eye for a pass was phenomenal. Again, like Robson, brave, incredibly brave, strong, aggressive, standard setter, as I said, and in the big moments, okay, he got sent off a few times where maybe you might say let his team down a little bit, but he's always pulling people up by their bootlaces. And in the treble season, famously against Juventus, he'd been booked. He was out of the final, but he just lifted his levels and he wanted to get the team there, and so he did. And I mean, people talk about that game. I have to say, I saw him play like that. God, I don't even know. I'd run out of fingers if I tried to tell you about the amount of times that I've been at a game and watched him do what he did that night against Juventus. But because it was on the big stage, obviously people talk about him more. I said to my lad the other day, he always asked me about the treble season and not just about United when we were good in general. And I said to him, that season, Keane had been out for a year, obviously. We had flair players like Giggs, Beckham, Scholesy. We had goal scorers like Cole, Sheringham, Yorkie, and Ollie. And we had beasts like Jaap Stam at the back. But I honestly think the one player we couldn't do without was Roy Keane. In amongst that company, the one player we couldn't do without was Roy Keane. And he got injured, I think, in the FA Cup final. So he pretty much played almost every game that season. He was pretty much ever present. But he was suspended for the Champions League final. And again, I can never prove it, but I think we'd have been perfectly fine with Keane and Nicky Butt in the middle of the park. But because Scholes and Keane were missing, I know we won in the end, but we just got completely battered by Bayern Munich that night. And the gods were smiling on us. Matt Busby was up there on his 90th birthday making sure we won that game, and the Busby babes, I swear, because someone was smiling on us that night. But Keane missing was a massive miss. It ended badly. It ended on a sour note, and I sometimes wish he'd make peace, not necessarily with Ferguson, because it's him and Ferguson. It's a Ferguson problem rather than a United problem. But I think at times he has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder about United, and I think deep down he's a Red, and I think he wants to see us do better. But he often gives off a vibe that he doesn't really care too much about United, and it's not like Neville and Scholes and those players who refer to United as we and are clearly not everybody's cup of tea, but I believe clearly desperate for United to do well again. I know other people disagree with that, but anyway, regardless of that, I have to almost put that to the side and say, as a player, the most influential player for me, my favourite ever United player. So he's certainly going to be top of this list, and was there for 12 years, and it was the complete centre midfield player. Had everything in his locker. So number one for me is Roy Keane. Really enjoy doing stuff like this. Talk about players that have been so good for the team that I was privileged to watch over the years. So I'll do one for every position. I'll do one for wingers, I'll do one for centre forwards, I'll do one for centre back, I'll do one for full backs. I'll do one for goalkeepers, although there probably hasn't even been 5 decent goalkeepers in my time, but I'll do it anyway. Probably next time I'll go striker. I think when I look at the midfielders down the years, I've picked 5 there. From 88 until, I've obviously spoke about Robson, there wasn't anyone else really, and I've said about Ince actually. So Ince and Robson were around in that 88, and then till Keane came, and then he was there obviously for a long time. Bruno's more recent, and Scholesy was in and around the era when Keane was there as well. I look at like, well, we had Hargreaves, Carrick's probably a bit unlucky not to be on that list. Nicky Butt was good, but probably didn't play quite enough in that position to get a mention really in the top 5. Brian McClair's underrated, bit of a figure of fun almost amongst United fans a little bit. Brian McClair, and obviously he was a striker but converted to a midfielder, but played a massive part in that 92-93 team alongside Paul Ince, and never let you down after it whenever he was needed. But there's not a plethora of centre midfielders down the years, because we always had a lot of those players I just mentioned were there for such a long time. So the longevity of those players means that there's not that many other ones to talk about. I don't think there's many notable absentees in that list. And I actually don't think, you can disagree with me obviously, there's much argument to the top 5. I think they are the 5 best midfielders since I started watching United. Obviously I do that because I'm doing the video. Maybe some people might disagree with the order of it, but I'd be interested to see if I've missed anyone and other people think different. So it won't take you long to put 5 in the comments. You put your 5, spark a bit of a conversation, and I'll do another one soon. All the best. Up the Reds. Glazers out.